Hello, Happy Valley. Today's video is on the Japanese Notan. We will be sketching out and creating 3 possible designs. In a later video, I will be demonstrating how to create your own actual Japanese-inspired Notan. Let's get started. All right, so here is an example of a Notan final piece. So you look here, this is the big shape that came out, and then they cut into it and had smaller shapes that go back. This is something that you can do, what I call a double flip. This is not required of you, but I would like to see you try to challenge yourself a little bit. You'll get brownie points with me if you attempt this. So anyway, everything is just mirrored out. It flips. It literally flips out. And here's a more difficult one. This has a lot of cuts in it. This is not something I'm expecting at all. This is a more challenging art piece to create, but it has a really cool end result. So this is something that you can do. You can simply start with a simple geometric shape, which we've got the triangle in here, and it's just been cut into several times, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, to make this image. So this is something you'd want to do. You simply start off with 4 triangles, but something needs to be done on all 4 sides. Here is another one. This is one done by a student, and I used to work with colored paper and let them use different colors, but I just like the black and white, and it also goes back to the traditional Notan, or the yin and the yang, working with light and dark. So I just prefer the other option, but this is what I used to do. So they've even rotated their original shape, and that's something that you can do if you want to. Just make sure that it fits on that paper really well. Again, another one. There's a lot more on this. You only have to create 4 on each, 4 shapes really in total. 1 on each side, but this student went above and beyond and created multiple elements, and it really creates this cool organic flowing Notan. I really like this. And here's a simple one, keeping it with simple geometric shapes. Again, we're just using circles and triangles on this, but it does have a flip in it, and it comes out quite nice. It's very peaceful looking. And then my most crazy one that I had a student create, creating seahorses, or the silhouette of a seahorse. And so every little piece is mirrored, and I really enjoyed this one as well. So, challenge yourself. I want to see you, don't just sit there and do something simple, but know your limitations. If cutting is not your strong suit, or making sure things line up nice and neat is not one of your strong suits, don't sit here and challenge yourself like this, especially if you're not working with the proper materials, because you're just going to become frustrated beyond belief. Before we get started, you're going to need a little bit of supplies, and that would just be a white piece of paper, no lined paper, and you're going to need a pencil. You can have a pen if you would like. That's not required, but a pencil is, and I prefer you to work with a pencil. But a Notan, and this is just our practice, but a Notan is the Japanese element of art, which is different than us, but they have an element of art called Notan, which stands for dark and light. And if you remember, a Notan is based off of the yin and the yang, meaning that they are both independent pieces, yet they work together in harmony. Dark and light work together in harmony. So we're going to practice a design. We're just going to create a possible design. We're sketching 3. So you are going to be sketching 3 designs. And one of them you're actually going to create in a later video. So remember, practice makes perfect. And before we get ready to create our actual piece or our actual Notan, we want to get our ideas out on paper. So what you're going to do is make 3 boxes. And I don't want these boxes to be a tiny little box. Let's utilize this paper. So just make a big giant box. It doesn't have to be massive. Here's one, and we can also use the back of the paper, which I'm going to probably use. But here's my second. We're just making big boxes. They don't even have to be that perfect. If you're a perfectionist, you know, get a ruler out, but that's not a requirement. And I'm going to use the back to do my third box. I'm just going to place it directly right in the center. Make these pretty big. Don't make little tiny boxes. I'm going to get after you if you do that. All right, let's flip it back over. So what is required of you is that you are going to create a design on each side of the box. So you should have a minimum of 4 drawings on this box. And you are going to start and stop on that same line. Okay, so this right here is one line. And I'm going to use my pen so it makes it a little bit easier to see. I'm going to zoom in. So what I mean by this is you are going to start and stop. Make my box a little bit darker so you guys can see. Okay. So what I mean is you start on this line and you have to stop on that line. And you're going to make a random design. Now you can create something that's geometric. Geometric are mathematically named shapes. Those are shapes that we know. Squares, triangles, hexagons. This is all about creating shapes. We're not creating pictures. So don't sit there and draw SpongeBob on there because it's not going to work that way. We are creating shapes. They can be organic or they can be geometric. Do not create characters. All right, so I'm just going to I'm going to make a little dot that says this is where I am starting on this line right here. And I'm going to create just a random shape. And I'm stopping on that same line. Notice as my line stops on the same line. And it's kind of difficult to see, so I'm just going to use a pen. It has to start and stop on the same line. I know I'm being repetitive, but sometimes I have students that will stop it over here. That's not the same line. Okay. Now, I'm going to make another one. I love these organic shapes, these free-flowing irregular shapes. That's something I'm into. But let's just make a geometric shape on the opposite side. And when you design these, you don't want to make them too difficult because you are going to cut them out. So don't make these tiny designs that stay really, really close to the line or that have a lot of movements. Of course, right now this is just practice. Notice as it started and stopped on the same line, this line. Now I've only got a little bit of space here, but I can still make something interesting. So I'm going to make like a shallow shape. And what I mean by shallow is it's not really going into the space here. It's actually staying quite close to that line. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, just something a little bit opposite. Now that's a potential for a design. And what we'll do with the actual Notan is that these shapes would be cut out and then they are literally flipped. They are flipped. Okay, so this would be cut out and then flipped out. Of course, I will explain this whenever we do the actual exercise. This is just sketching out, getting our ideas out. All right, let's try something a little bit more complex. Now, you don't have to do this. Remember, for this project or for this assignment, you need to have something drawn on each side of the box, each side of the square. Something done on each side. So there should be at least 4 designs on here. starting and stopping on the same line. All right, so let's try something a little bit more complex. This time I'm going to make an organic shape. Here's my organic shape. It has started and stopped on that same line. Remember that you will be cutting out one of these designs, not off of this paper, but you will be re-replicating this, whichever one of these designs you really like, and then you'll be cutting out these shapes. So don't make them too difficult. I always have kids that make shapes that are very, very hard to cut out. And what I mean by that is, here, I'll do one right up here. Looks like Bart Simpson's hair. Look at how many angles, how many cuts you're going to have to make. And you have to cut the whole piece out. You won't be able to cut out pieces and put it together. So look at this. This is just, unless you are really good at cutting and take your time with this, this would even be difficult for me. There's too many sharp edges in this. They're too close together, and it's really time consuming, and it will be very frustrating. This would be a very bad idea to do. So on the other sides, let's do something a little bit more complex. And now you can find things to trace. If you have something at your house like a quarter and you want to make a circle, you could totally trace a quarter onto here, or some kind of shape. You could trace anything. I've got this piece of tape here, so you can trace it. The thing is, it needs to start and stop on the line. Okay, so I'm just going to trace this part of a circle on here and show you that you can use shapes that you have at your house or things that you have at your house. I can use this, and I'm just simply tracing that onto the shape. Pretty cool. These things would be cut out. Now, you flip out these whole pieces. Let's try something a little bit more difficult. So this whole piece would be flipped out. If I cut another shape inside of that space, so if I design another shape inside of that space, just like this, that's fine because it's starting and stopping on the same line. Then what would happen is this whole piece would be flipped out. So this big piece would be flipped out. This would be flipped out, and then this would be flipped back. Something like this is what I'm talking about. All right, so we have the square. Here's our shape, the original shape. This piece, the big piece, was flipped out, and then we have a small piece that was flipped back. Okay, so you can create something fun like this, and I'm going to show you guys some examples whenever you get ready to do your actual design. All right, so you have this big piece that's been cut out. These little pieces that went inside were flipped back. So you can create something like that if you want there to be multiple flips inside of the space. You could even do that here. We could make a smaller version of this organic shape. And then this piece right here would be flipped. The whole big piece would be flipped out. The little piece would be flipped back. So big piece flipped out. Little piece flipped back. And you don't need to do these arrows on here. It just makes it more visual for you guys. All right. But I would most definitely avoid things like this, because this is just too many little sharp edges and angles that you would have to cut with scissors. It's going to be quite difficult. Don't make it too hard on yourselves. All right. I want you to create 3 designs, so I have one more that I need to create and draw. Notice that they are just basic shapes. Oh, it's a little hard to see. My Sharpies come through the paper. Hopefully this won't distract you guys too much. You can see my square. Please ignore all this other crazy stuff on here. All right, so stick with simple shapes. Do not draw SpongeBob on here or, I don't know, any other characters on here. You can do letters though, and we could do letters. I'm going to do that with you guys. So let's say I was trying to create the letter P, okay, for my first name. So I'm actually going to flip my paper upside down so you can see. My P would have to start on this line and stop on this line. And if I'm going to make a big old bolded letter, there we go. Now, as far as flipping a piece back in, that's not really going to happen because that has to, in order for it to be flipped back out, it has to start and stop on the on the line. So I would not be able to do that middle part of my P. I would just have to leave it as it is. But that pretty much, shows that it's the letter P. So you can do letters, but if they have those middle parts in there, you can't draw them in there. That will not happen. It's just kind of like the SpongeBob thing. You cannot do anything like that. It would just have to not be existent because it has to start and stop on the same line. Flip this back over. But you can do anything that you'd like. Just, again, pick things that are not too difficult to cut out. You can do basic geometric shapes if you wanted to. You could do squares on here. You could do circles on here. You could do triangles on here. You can keep it very simple. I would like to see you do one design that is a bit challenging. What I mean by that is sketch out. It doesn't mean that your final piece has to be that way, but I find that it's more interesting if it utilizes more space inside here and doesn't stay shallow. What I mean by shallow is staying close to that original line. So what shallow would be something like this. This is a very shallow design because it's very close to the original line. But I want you to create 3 designs. That's all you simply need to do. You're not cutting this out. You're just creating 3 possible designs. And then one of those 3 you are going to recreate as an actual Notan, and that's in a later video. So you can number these if you'd like and pick out which one that you would like to recreate. And so I think out of all of these, this first one is my most exciting, or the one that I'm most excited about. So this is the one I'm going to pick. So I would like you to make a check mark or write, I picked this one, or this is the design I want to do, somewhere on here that tells me that this is the one that you are going to create for your final piece. And there you have it.